Recognizes the gentleman for Virginia for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and Ranking Member Correa for convening today's hearing and our witnesses for joining us. Last week, I and 27 other members of the House visited Minnesota, and we saw firsthand the negative impacts of the mass deportation, the mass destruction machine that the Trump administration has assembled. American citizens and our law-abiding immigrant neighbors are terrified. Businesses and schools in Minnesota are closed. American citizens, again, are staying home because they don't want to be the next person pulled through the streets, put in a chokehold, or, God forbid, fatally shot by a federal agent, maybe ICE, maybe CBP, dressed and armed as if they're in a war zone. Reported this week that local law enforcement leaders in St. Paul and Minnesota have shared that their officers, off-duty officers, have been stopped and detained and harassed by ICE. The masked and in many cases minimally trained officers have dragged pregnant mothers, pepper-sprayed children, placed their knees on the necks of American citizens. And recently, they detained a 5-year-old, and then used that 5-year-old. You might not be able to see it. This is him. This is Liam Ramos, 5 years old. Detained him, used him as bait to lure his family members out of their home. Then they shipped him to a detention facility 1,000 miles away, 5 years old. In city after city, CBP Commander Greg Bovino has strutted around spreading terror. LA, Chicago, Charlotte, New Orleans, Minneapolis. This Congress must take immediate action to rein in the outrageous abuses we're seeing by ICE and CBP officers. We need to end the masking, end the secret police, require use of force standards and enforce them, and withdraw the thousands of federal agents from Minnesota. And Secretary Noem and the leadership of these agencies must be held accountable for the egregious abuses that we've seen. Ms. Sabatino, I have a 5-year-old. I dropped them off at preschool this morning. I won't ask you if you have children. It's not my business, not the committee's business. You have had an honorable career in law enforcement. You're highly trained. You've been a leader in your field. I just want to ask you a simple question. Were you ever trained to use a 5-year-old in a law enforcement operation in the way that Liam Ramos was used? Were you ever trained to use a 5-year-old as bait to get his family members to open the door? Were you trained to do that, and would you countenance one of your officers doing that?
I'm not familiar with that case.
I'm not asking you about this situation. I'm saying, were you trained, and would you allow a child to be used in a law enforcement operation? Would you allow your officers to do it?
I'm not familiar with that case. It's not part of our training.
What would you do if one of your officers at a port of entry perhaps did that? Used a 5-year-old to get their parents or a family member to open their car door? What would you do to one of those officers if they used a child in a law enforcement operation like that?
Any allegation of unprofessional behavior or use of force would be investigated by the appropriate third party.
Okay. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back. At this point,